Hey guys, Wadeboshiverson here. Time for another edition of Wadeboshiverson on basketball. Today we're going to do rapid fire questions from my last video where I requested you guys to send in some questions for me, and now I'm going to answer those questions rapid fire style. There was a lot of really good ones. There were some that were really deep and would take way too long, so I'm going to save those questions for separate episodes coming up. One of the questions that I really liked was what will it take for LeBron James to surpass Michael Jordan? I probably have a bit of a controversial opinion on that, so that'll be coming up in a future video. And there's a few others that are really good questions, but for now we're going to go rapid fire and hopefully knock out 10-15 questions or so. Alright, from AS Manguson 97, will the Nets surpass the Heat with all the acquisitions they got? No, not even close. Let's just add, first of all, Deron Williams, point guard. Awesome point guard if you need scoring. He's not very good at passing the ball. He takes a lot of shots. He's more of a high-volume scorer than he is somebody that you want to distribute the ball. That was one of the great things about John Stockton. Was that he was such a big distributor. It was pass first, shoot second. With Deron Williams, it is more of a shoot first, pass second. He's kind of like a Gilbert Arenas. That's really what I think a good comparison for him is. Really good three-point shooter. Bit streaky at times, but definitely shoot first, pass second. That's not going to work well when the rest of your teammates are always really high-quality guys like the Nets currently have. They lost a guy named Gerald Wallace. I think that was a mistake. He was somebody that was a defensive focus. He didn't take a lot of shots, and I would have kept him around if possible, because they didn't need to get rid of him in terms of a talent-wise, because the Celtics didn't really want him. So I would have looked at other ways to clear that cap space to make that trade, because that would have been a phenomenal guy to bring off the bench as a six-man. Shooting guard, you got Joe Johnson, another high-volume shooter, shoots a lot. Doesn't play a whole heck of a lot of defense, so that's going to be the Achilles heel. Too many people that want to shoot too many times, and then also defense. It's not a real strong defensive team. Paul Pierce, extremely old. He's getting up there past his prime, and is he going to be able to log, a full 40 minutes per game? They don't have a solid bench either. That's the other problem. They lost Chris Humphries as well, so they lose a lot of their bench capabilities. Power forward, you have obviously KG, Kevin Garnett. I think he's going to be interesting if he can hold together this season, but I'm not so sure of him anymore. He's just too old at this point. But I love him defensively. I would love to see him more in a six-man role off the bench for a contending team rather than a starting role. But obviously this isn't a perfect world. Brook Lopez, big injury issues, rarely stays healthy. If he can stay healthy, he's a solid offensive center. Defensively, he's not so great. He really struggles on the boards. Any 7-footer who stays in there for 35 to 40 minutes a game should get more than 6 boards. Brook Lopez doesn't. That's a problem. He is a good block shot presence. KG is also good defensively in there. But I fear that they aren't going to be able to stay on the court long enough, and they don't really have a viable backup in New Jersey anymore. All right, moving on. How does the NBA today compare to the 1990s? Doesn't really compare all that well. 90s was based on more of a strategic game, more of a team-oriented game. The current NBA is more focused on a one-on-one matchup. I think we saw in the playoffs a lot, the whole offensive focus was give the ball to LeBron James, spread the floor, LeBron James takes one-on-one towards the defense. And then on the flip side, it was Tim Duncan post-up, or Tony Parker, or a pick and roll, something to that effect. The Spurs play a little bit more of that 90s style game, so for those of you that didn't get to watch any of the 90s basketball, I'd recommend that you go check out, if you watch the finals. Kind of like the Spurs was kind of like a poor man's 90s basketball era game. So that's who I would recommend if you want to watch, if you want to see some similar 90s games, or better yet, just go rent them. Great. Great idea. Does Kobe have his last ring? And who do the Lakers need to make another charge? First of all, Kobe has his last ring. Nobody who is 37 years old, or just about, is going to get another ring unless he's willing to not be the man. He's too old, way too old, to make another as the man. I mean, if he goes and he is willing to accept a second-tier role or a third-tier role, then he can win another championship. But he's obviously not going to do that. He told Dwight Howard 3 or 4 more years until you're going to be the number one. It's not going to happen. There's nobody else who's going to be able to come there and tell Kobe off. If you're not going to give the reins over to Dwight Howard, he's certainly not going to give the reins over to anybody else. Who do the Lakers need to make another charge? God. That's about it. They need a hell of a lot of luck in order to do anything. They got to sack D'Antoni. There's so many holes. They have a near 40-year-old point guard who's too slow to play any defense, can barely make it up the court. They have Pau Gasol, who absolutely hates D'Antoni. D'Antoni hates Gasol. They brought in Kaman, who's a slow center. Doesn't fit the D'Antoni system at all. They released one of their best perimeter defensive players in Meta World Peace. They have no perimeter presence. Have I said enough yet? By the way, Steve Blake, probably the best guy on that bench. Pretty scary. Oh, Anton Jameson. Sorry, I forgot. He's almost 42. No. They need God in order to go anywhere. Is LaFemzo Ellis the best player of all time? LOL. That's from Glam20, obviously. No comment. NC Cameron 03, some great players on that defensive book. Do you see more Heat teams forming in the future with multiple All-Stars to try and win a championship? Is there any other way to do so? I think you have to do that in today's league. The Knicks obviously aren't going to be able to compete, I don't think. And they are the closest. But now you're starting to see Darren Williams, who was talking with Joe Johnson to get together with, teams like that are melding together. Dwight Howard talking with Monte Ellis, talking with all the other stars. You have the stars talking with stars. The current problem is that a lot of these contracts that these players sign, they're so based on what they can make overseas, what they can make in, what's the word I'm looking for? In outside of the league, and endorsements. That's the word I was looking for, endorsements. So much of their contracts are based on endorsements. For LeBron James, his endorsements are so high when he wins championships that the salary he makes from the NBA is kind of just, pocket change, really. I mean, his deals with Nike and Gatorade and things like that, that's what's his money. That's where he makes his money off of. So if he has to give up 500 grand to go play for the Heat, and then so he can then make from Nike and from Gatorade and from all his endorsement deals, he can then go make an extra $100 million. Why wouldn't he? So you don't see, whereas it used to be that those endorsements were a much smaller portion, the NBA salary was their big key. So that's where teams could keep their players, their star players. So that's something the NBA is going to have to overcome somehow, because you've got this really big parity now where you got a select few really, really good teams and a lot of really bad ones, and a lot of really, really, really terrible teams that are all-time epic. Anybody say Charlotte Bobcats? All right, does Panini put fake memorabilia into their cards? I think that's about 100% sure that we know now, especially since somebody has come forward and said that that Panini bought fake memorabilia, along with Topps and Upper Deck. I'm not trying to be a Panini basher. All 3 companies have used fake memorabilia. Whether or not that was intentional, that's another question. That's something that I don't know enough about in order to come up with an opinion about that. Your opinion on flopping and the argument that it's a viable strategy. Maybe LeBron's future free agent moves as well. There's a lot of question on LeBron's future free agent moves, and I'm going to do a video on that instead of answering that question here. But on the flopping argument, if I were an NBA player, I would flop. Sorry, you gotta. It's just like, in football, a wide receiver, when he gets bumped and, for pass interference, he's going to sell it. He's not going to sit there and try and just take it and try and hide it. You got to make sure the referee sees it. So I have no problem with NBA players attempting to flop. Ways that you got to come up to combat that is you got to start teaching the referees to look at that and focus on it, as opposed to, you know, just say if there's contact, there's got to be a foul. But I would start calling a defensive foul when you start making a flop, or something that's going to affect the game instead of the money. I mean, a $5,000 fine in the NBA Finals, where these guys stand to lose, you know, millions of dollars on endorsements and loaded contracts and incentives. What, of course they're going to flop, because that one extra possession can be the difference between winning the NBA championship or not winning it. So, do I like it as a fan? No. Would I do it if I were a player? Yes. Does the NBA need to change the way that they're combating this? Yes, that's for sure. All right, from Marine Forever 1775. Oh, I can't think of a topic. Well, that was very useful. From A.S. Manguson, no, sorry, from Martin Spirit D. Stavlayet. Do you play NBA 2K? Yes and no. I screw around with rosters on sports games. I don't really play the actual game, so depends what you think. I like putting through simulations and stuff like that. Anybody plays Baseball Mogul? Really fun game. I enjoy that sort of thing. Mixing and mashing the rosters, getting to play with old, or getting to, you know, say, well, I'm going to bat Babe Ruth first, or something like that. Anyway, moving on. Do you have think about starting a new PC of some player? If yes, then who will it be? I think he means, do you think? All the time. I'd love to start a new PC player. My hands are a bit tied because I refuse to do anything with Panini. Also, it's just very bland and boring to collect some of the new players, because of Panini is the only one that makes them. So I'd have to choose somebody who was in the past. If I were to choose somebody right about now, I'd choose a defensive center. It's kind of the way I like to collect. I like defensive players. If I could afford him, I'd do John Stockton. That would be somebody that I would love to collect. But John Stockton is just way, way too expensive. $70 an autograph, just too high for me to deal with. Especially with his ties here to Washington State. Also really cool. All right, and I'm going to do one more question is, from the Pinoy Mamba, who will win the 2014 NBA Championship and why? Oh boy. The Rockets aren't going to be able to compete this year. It's going to take a lot for Dwight Howard and James Harden to get on the same page. They're very different players. And coming out of that West, the Thunder aren't strong enough. You take James Harden off of the Thunder that lost to the Heat 2 years ago, then they would still lose to the Heat, right? I mean, really? 2014, that's this coming season. Got to go with Miami. LeBron James always stays healthy. He always plays 80 games. And nobody can beat him in the league right now. The Spurs provided the most viable, sound way of trying to beat them, and they couldn't do it. So I am choosing the Miami Heat, and I say by a long shot. The Nets, I think you're going to find, are going to crumble. I think they might win 50 games, but they will probably get beat in the first round. They're going to have to log way too many minutes on those older veterans, which I don't think is going to happen. Anyway, guys, that's it for this episode of Wadeboshiverson on basketball. I will be coming back at you with another Mail Day video very shortly. See you guys. Appreciate it.